Hi, and welcome to A Sense of Wellness podcast, inspiring and empowering a healthier you. I'm your host, Susan Greeley, and I'll be diving deeper into the 4 pillars of wellness: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. Today, we're in for a real treat. We're going to be talking about building or rebuilding personal health from the mind, body, and spirit. And we'll see where else this conversation goes. Today, I'm joined by the legendary Udo Erasmus, who is a highly acclaimed health, wellness, spiritual, and human nature educator. He is the author of many books, including bestseller Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, which has sold over 250,000 copies. Udo has traveled to more than 30 countries to deliver presentations and teach at events hosted by Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra, among others. He has keynoted an international brain health conference, and he is the co-founder of Udo's Choice line of healthy oils, which can be found in Whole Foods Market, as well as other health food stores worldwide. So I had prepared several topics to talk about today, and Udo and I decided that we will save all about nutrition and essential fats and talk about the nutrition subject in a separate episode. Today, I'm simply honored and thrilled to have Udo join me today, and let's see where this conversation goes. Thank you, Udo.
All right. Thank you for having me.
So you have the most amazing personal story, and I would love to start by hearing about your background, Udo, and then we're going to go ahead and start talking about some of your favorite topics. And you and I just decided before recording that we have too many things to talk about, and I'll premise this conversation with that.
Okay. So I was born in 1942. So I'm an old guy. I just turned 82. I was born in a part of Poland that was at that time Germany, and that came out of Hitler and Stalin making a non-aggression pact. And as part of that pact of signing it, they were going to not fight each other, but then of course they broke the pact a few years later. But that's politics. So Latvia, where my parents were living, went to the Soviet Union as part of that deal. And part of Poland went to Germany as part of that deal. But there was nobody from Latvia or Poland at the meeting. So they just took it. And my father left Latvia because he loved Russians as human beings, because they're very emotional and heartfelt people. He hated communism because they took everything away from everybody. So he lost his farm in Latvia, and he was given a replacement farm in Poland, which was then that part of Germany. And so the Polish farmer became his farmhand on his own farm. And you can imagine it would have been a little tension there.
A little.
So my dad said, look, we're living in crazy times. Let's run the farm the way the farm needs to be run. And when all of this craziness settles out, and we'll sort it out. They became really good friends. They helped us get out at the end of the war, out of Poland. We ended up having to flee west into Germany. And we had the communists chasing us in tanks and trucks. These were all women with young children on horse-drawn hay wagons on dirt roads without any military presence. And the Allies, which we like to think of as the good guys, they were using us refugees as target practice, shooting at us from planes. Yeah, oh my God. And my mother had 6 kids. 4 were hers, 2 whose parents had perished. And there were dead horses and dead people in the ditches. And the road was always being shot at. So she said she decided it was safer to get, and this was winter, to walk through the snow-covered fields than to stay on the road. But she couldn't handle 6 kids because they were all under 6 years old. So she had to leave 4 kids behind and dropped us off at a farm. And then they took us to Berlin. But in Berlin, everything was uproar and all the relatives had already fled. So I ended up in an orphanage for a while. And then her sister found out, once they got out, her sister found out what happened. And she then came back and found us and reunited us with the family. So that was my early childhood. I don't remember much of that story other than I never felt safe. And I never knew what I could depend on because the story changed every 5 seconds, right? And I remember being hungry. So it was like basic stuff. And it was not fun, obviously. But I look at it now as a huge gift because what happened to me, just like from a personal point of view, I got everything stripped. I lost the culture. I lost the country. I lost the neighborhood. I lost the friends. I lost the farm. I lost the animals on the farm. I lost that whole way of living. And the only thing that was left is the clothes I wore, the body I have, and the life inside of that body. That's it.
That's right.
And because I lost all of that so early, I never put a lot of emphasis on wanting to have any of that stuff. So it made my life very simple. And because I didn't have a culture and I didn't have a bunch of stuff that I memorized and said, well, this is true for me, my country, right or wrong, or whatever all of that stuff is, I had to basically figure out everything from scratch. And because I was really easily frightened and never felt safe, I always tried to figure out how things work. Mm-hmm. Because when you know how things work, then you get predictability and that gives you security. So I was a born scientist, you might say, right? When I was 6, I heard adults argue about really crazy things, really trivial things. And the thought occurred to me, man, there must be a way that people can live in harmony. In this little cocky voice, and I'm going to find out how, being 6 years old, not knowing how complicated everything is, right? But that's been my driver all my life. So when it came to university, I wanted to study biology because I wanted to know what life is. Because I'm living on a planet that's teeming with life. This is what the treasure on this planet is. It's got life on it. Nothing on the moon, nothing on Mars, nothing on Venus, right? This planet has life on it. So I wanted to know everything about it. So I got into biology. Biology is the study of life.
Right.
But we never learned about life in biology. We learned about form and function. I had this thought, that this imagination, we're going to have a beaker of something at some point in the study of biology that's liquid and shining, and we could look at it and say, there's life. We never got that beaker. When we started with living animals, by the time we were done with them, they were dead. We learned something about form and function, but we never learned about life. And it bothered me. But I didn't really understand that that's what was happening. That I only realized that a few years ago. Then I moved into psychology. Psychology is study of soul. Well, we didn't get soul in psychology. We got thoughts, beliefs, emotions. Then I got into medicine because I wanted to know what health is, because we call it healthcare. We only learned about disease. I went and talked to the dean. I said, what is health? He said, we don't know. We're working on it. You cannot imagine the disappointment look on my face when I got that answer. And then we were told in first year medicine that a doctor should always sound as though he knows what's going on, even when he doesn't. And on the farm, we call that lying. And that ended my medical career because I wasn't going to make my living lying to people. It doesn't work. When you lie to people, you create confusion and you break down the social structures. And we live in a time when we're noticing that quite a bit.
Yes.
Right? Whether it's media or government or pharma or whatever it is, there's a lot of trust being lost in the past few years. I mean, honestly, since the Roman Empire, if you really look at it, people have been lying to each other, and that creates social disintegration. So I went back into biochemistry and genetics because in biological science, you learn more about health than you learn in medicine. Medicine is the study of disease. Biology is the study of normal functioning in normal creatures in normal situations. And that's kind of pretty close to health. So I ended up there and I still didn't find what I was looking for. So I left. But I kept looking. What is this thing? And I didn't know. And I have to say, when I was turned 17, I remember my heart started to ache. You know what heartache is, right?
Oh, I sure do.
Uncomfortable.
Yes, I know that comforting feeling of rubbing.
Uncomfortable, painful, uneasy feeling in your chest. And there are lots of triggers for that feeling. So like a girl dumps me, I'm heartbroken, right? Or my grandmother dies, I was really close to her, sadness, sorrow, right? Or my dog runs away, I miss him, right? Or somebody makes a promise and they don't keep the promise, disappointment. And there's so many names for it based on what triggers it. But it's always the same feeling in the same place, in us. And so I eventually figured out the trigger is not the cause of heartache. The cause of heartache is something else. And the cause of heartache is our disconnection from ourselves. Our disconnection from ourselves. How does that happen? Well, if you think about life and focus, there was a time when you were in your mother's womb, right? The sperm was alive, the egg was alive, the zygote was alive, the little creature that you were was alive, And it was, I call it the Buddha tank, and it was floating in the Buddha tank, and there was nothing to do. There was nowhere to go. Everything was taken care of, and it was pretty safe.
Doesn't that sound so peaceful?
Yeah. So
Very
guess where?
comforting and peaceful.
Yeah. So now I say, well, where was the focus? Where was the kid's focus in the mother's womb? Well, there was no place to go. So the focus was at rest, talking about peace, right? At rest, inside, in its source, in life, and beyond that, in awareness. And you literally floated in the Buddha tank. You didn't know you had a mother surrounding you, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't know there was a world surrounding your mother. You had no language. You didn't have to go potty, right? The food was supplied. You didn't even have to ask for it, right? It was just automatically being supplied. What a magical system this is, right? So you were hanging out, floating in this tank. Sometimes you see on fetal pictures, a little smile on their face. And then you've seen those?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so there you were, and you were literally in deep meditation for the 9 months or however long you spent in there. Like a yogi, like a master, right? Okay, so then that's your pre-existence. Could also call it paradise, by the way. Could also call it kingdom of heaven, by the way, right? But I want to stay with the science more than, because they tell the same story. Science and religion tell the same story if you actually go to the foundations of them. Mm-hmm. So then you got born, you're kicked out, right? Expulsion from paradise, right? So you got kicked out, and now you had to get to know the world, because now you had to cry for your breast milk, and you had to cry for your blankie, and you had to cry for your sleepy and turn the lights out and warmth and to be held, and the simple things that you needed, you had to cry for because you didn't have any language. So then they say, use your words, use your words, use your words, right? And then slowly you learn the words, and you get to know the world because you had to understand that you needed to survive in the world. And through your senses, automatically, your focus was drawn out into the world anytime something changed. Change attracts your attention, right? Automatically. There's a sound. It's, oh, what's that? Or something moves. Oh, what's that? Because you have to assess now, is this friend or is this foe or is this irrelevant? And you have to do that very quickly because your survival depends on it. So in this process, you went from being present inside, but absent outside in your focus. And now you're getting more and more present outside and absent inside in your focus. And in that process, that's where heartache began. Heartache is the central symptom of your disconnection from yourself, from your inner self, from the life, from the awareness, from the peace, from the unconditional love, that other source of your existence, right?
Is this what you call the thirst of the heart?
The thirst of the heart is the heartache. Yeah, and it's the thirst of the heart. It's actually, I call it the greatest gift you've been given other than being alive. When your heart aches, you don't like it most of the time, and you want to make it go away, and you do that by distracting yourself or ignoring it or explaining it away or denying it or blaming it on something or somebody. Mm-hmm. But actually, that's the greatest gift you've been given other than being alive, because it's calling your focus to come back home to where your fullness lives, where your wholeness is, where your love, where you are unconditionally loved by life, right? So it's the call to bring your focus back to that. But we don't know that because in no culture do they teach that. No culture systematically teaches that when your heart aches, it's not about what triggered it, it's about what caused it. And what caused it was your disconnection from yourself. And of course, we don't teach it because all of the people who teach us are disconnected from themselves too, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a long history of disconnection. And every once in a while, somebody understands this a little better and they become teachers of human nature. Buddha was one of those, and Krishna was one of those, and Christ was one of those. And I think Socrates was in that gang as well. And there have been people who've taught about the inner human being. And they always said what you need to do, and you should do this first. They said, kingdom of heaven is within you. First seek the kingdom, and then everything else will start to fall into place. Now, that's not how they say it. That's my paraphrase, right? And they all said, do that first. Because if you bring your focus, so what I say, sit with heartache, because that gets you out of your head, puts you in your body. So that's good. That's somatic, right? So in your body, not comfortable, but just feel it. Just be with it. Accept it. You might have some tears, but it won't kill you, right? Appreciate it, accept it, embrace it as the call to come home, because less than a hair's breadth behind that heartache is your wholeness, is what you're chasing in the world to try and find, and you will never find in the world because the disconnect is on the inside and the reconnect has to be on the inside. And that's what every smart teacher, every teacher of human nature, they all said it in one way or another. They all said that. So heartache is the greatest gift you've been given other than being alive. It grounds you, makes you simple. It's your driving force. So it keeps you from just sitting on a log until you die, right? It's the call to come home. It's the starting point for the journey. And when you learn to come home and you do that, then you start to feel good, and then you'll start to drift again. And then the heartache will come back to remind you, because your senses will take you out automatically every day. Every day you need to come home deliberately to yourself, right? So heartache is the greatest gift you've been given. I felt that when I was 17. Nobody talked about it. I couldn't shake it. I felt it every day, pretty much all day. And it wasn't until I was 30, so this is 13 years of heartache for no reason. I mean, you could say, oh, I had a hard life. No, but it's like there wasn't something that triggered it. I just there was something missing. Loss. Heartache is about loss. And it's loss of something on the outside, or it's loss of yourself. Loss of connection to yourself. So for 13 years. Then I got into, after I left university, I wanted to find out. I was still, there's something missing. And so I did the red letter edition of the same King James version of the Bible. You know what that is?
I don't.
Okay, so in the red letter edition, everything Jesus says is in red ink, and everything else in the Bible is in black ink. And I'd come to the point where I said, who should I model myself? Who's my model? Where's a good model for me? Who do I want to be? And who can I copy? And how can I get there? And so to me, in my culture, said, okay, the only one that I have the most respect for would be Jesus. And then my question is, okay, so now I have a model. Now what do I do? Say, what do I actually want? I want to feel what he felt that made him able to do what he did, live like he did, say what he did. Because you know that when somebody writes poetry, they got to be feeling something, right? And you could say that Jesus' life was poetry, whether it was real or not, because people argue, oh, there was never such a person. But that was irrelevant to me, right? Yeah. There's something there that seemed to me I could emulate. So I wanted to know what that feeling was. I used the red letter edition because I'm 2,000 years late, right, to the party, right? And so then it's like, okay, well, from what is left of what he did and what he said, and through all the translation, there's still some stuff in there that's really inspiring. So I would take little things, put them to the test, and I had magical experiences. And I did that for about a year. And then this group of people came up the West Coast from California to Vancouver, where I was living. They called themselves the Jesus People's Army. And I thought that should have been a warning to me, because army was not a good word in my dictionary. Right. Because of my background. But I missed the cue. And I said, oh, they must be people like me. They're trying to figure it out. They're doing their own research. They're trying stuff out like I am, Yeah. So we're going to all get together. We're going to share our stories. We're all going to learn something, and we're all going to leave the evening enriched. Seemed like that would be like an incredible...
I'm with you. Sign me up. Sounds like...
Yeah. I want to be at that meeting, right? So I went to their coffee house. They invited people. Sat down at a table, and immediately this guy swooped in beside me. That should have been my second cue, but I missed that one too, because I thought we were going to have deep conversations.
Yeah, I was thinking I could play some sinister music here, but I don't have any.
Yeah, you might have to compose it. Anyway, so I sat down and I didn't introduce myself. I just looked at me in the eyes and I said, It must be possible to see God and live. Because I was told as a kid, if you see God, he kills you. It's like, wait a minute. He loves me unconditionally. He looks after me, or he makes me breathe when I'm asleep. He digests my food. He created this whole place for me to live in, loves me unconditionally. And if I look at him, he kills me. It's like, there's something wrong with that picture. So that's what I said to him. And I thought that would be the beginning of a nice, deep conversation. Well, he jumped out of his chair and his arms were flailing around his head and he was screaming at the top of his lungs, "You're from the devil. You're from the Antichrist. Get out."
Wow.
Yeah, a follower of the religion of love. Anyway,
right.
So I go slinking out of there and I'm standing on the sidewalk in the dark. It's an evening, right? And I'm thinking, well, I haven't seen God. Maybe I shouldn't be asking those questions. Because we were also told there are certain questions you shouldn't ask. But they wouldn't tell us what those questions were. Because if they'd have told us what those questions were, I would have asked them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Forbidden questions must be answered.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, or forbidden question. Oh, how interesting. Right? So, and then I was standing on the sidewalk and then I got really confused and really desperate. And I don't think I've had a more desperate moment in my life. And it was like desperation.
Right. How old were you at the time?
So it was in 1970, so I was 28.
Okay. And you can still feel that. That's the interesting thing. I can tell that you can still feel what it felt like at that moment.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was there.
Yeah.
Right. That's why. And with desperation comes sincerity. So the question for me was, I really want to know. And then I decided to go clear my head in nature. That's how I used to clear my head when the city got too much for me. And I hitchhiked out to a beach. And I was on the beach. There was nobody else on the beach. Totally deserted. Beautiful. Place to myself. And somebody had draped plastic over some logs and made this little dwelling. I said, okay, here's my hotel for the weekend. Mm-hmm. And I went to sleep. And in the middle of the night, I woke bolt upright from dead asleep. And there was a being made of light present. Wow. Just there. No words, no labels, just a being made of light. I couldn't tell if it was male or female. I couldn't tell if it was old or young. But a being made of light. No wings, so I figured it wasn't an angel, right? And this being embodied a message, but didn't say it, just embodied it. And I could put words to that embodiment, which was, I am come not to judge, but to love. There's the central message of the Master. I am come not to judge, but to love. That's a tall order, right? Because it's easy to judge.
Few words, extremely difficult. Right? Yes.
Yeah. It's a discipline, right? So instantly, all my confusion was gone. I've never had a doubt about what the Master's message was since then.
Right.
And it sort of became my go-to. I am come not to judge, but to love. So work towards that, right? And then when you say, okay, I'm going to love somebody unconditionally, and the moment you make that commitment, you notice every time you're not loving unconditionally. Then you get to learn something. So you get a little closer. You just never give up on the standard. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say. If the standard is I am come not to judge but to love, never, ever, ever, ever give up on that standard if that's your standard. Because that, holding that standard will drag you through all the stuff that you need to be dragged through to actually become that. Wow.
Imagine if everyone on the planet...
Well, that's where I was just going to go. I said, 8 billion people have that same... Well, before I say that, right? I then started to think, well, who was that? And, because you could have said, well, that was Christ because I was following a track like that. Mm-hmm. But then it was like, well, is that Christ or is that life? There was the life missing in biology, in when I studied biology, or is that life? Or is that the soul that's missing in psychology? Or was it spirit?
Right.
Because we don't have real good definitions because we don't have pictures of that stuff.
Right.
And I came to the conclusion that they were all the same. Life and Christ and soul and spirit are all the same.
See, and you just had that knowing. You didn't need that.
Yeah, it just made sense to me, right?
Right.
Then I started thinking about, okay, well, if that's true, if this is life and life is within every human being, isn't it true that the life in you loves your body unconditionally? Its message to your body, just like the master's message to humanity, I am come not to judge but to love. Life's message to your body is, I am come not to judge but to love. Life weighs nothing, runs everything, is the master in your body, is omnipresent in your body, omniscient in your body, which means all-knowing, and omnipotent, which is all-powerful in your body. There is no other power in your body than the power of life. Then you say, well, where's the life come from? Oh, well, all life on this planet basically comes from solar energy, right? So solar energy radiates from the sun in all directions. Some of it 93 million mile filter, because the temperature on the sun is 15 million degrees Celsius. So if you got too close, it could definitely burn your toenails, right? So it's filtered through 93 million miles of space. Then it's filtered through the atmosphere. Then it's filtered through green plants. And the solar energy fraction that remains is stored in bonds between atoms to make molecules. When you eat those molecules, those bonds are broken in your cells. That solar energy fraction is released. Now you call it life. Life is a fraction of solar energy. Oh, wow, that's true for you, and it's true for me, and it's true for the other 8 billion people on the planet, and it's also true for our dog, our cat, the trees, the daffodils, and the microbes. They all run on solar energy, right? They all run on fractions of solar energy. Oh my God, there is one sunshine and infinite, almost infinite creatures, all run by the same thing. And life is the master in your body. It's also the leader because it runs everything. So every human being has the perfect leader built into them, has access to that leader if they know how to bring their focus back inside in touch with that. And we could all live together in harmony because we're not getting somebody from 3,000 miles away telling us that he's the boss and here's how we should live, right? If you have a question about how to live, why don't you ask life? It's within you. It knows you more intimately than you know yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, 8 billion people. This is like the message. This is the message. Oh my God, 8 billion people could live in harmony if we minded our own business and we took life, that is unconditional love, as our boss. And we're actually wired for that. And behind that peace, our universal nature is peace, because that's what we come out of, and that's what the universe comes out of. Our individual essence is unconditional, empowering love. And it's a flow through the body of a solar energy fraction.
That's so beautiful. I don't even have a question in here.
Oh my God, right?
Yes.
So then the question is, how do you get there?
Well, so that's the thing. We come into this world, we're born, and even in the womb, I think many humans, you were born during wartime, like many babies, infants, fetuses are exposed to a lot of stress, even within the womb.
But wait. Stress, the peace that is the core of existence is not affected by stress. And the unconditional love, that is the energy, that is your life, that's not affected by stress either. Well, your body will be affected, and your mind may be affected, and your emotions may be affected, and down the line, your social interactions may be affected, or your relationship to the environment may be affected. But even if all of that is in chaos, the unconditional love is not affected. It is formless, indestructible, and it is perfect health, and it never dies.
And it is perfect.
And there's where my mother and my father are, and there's where our ancestors are, and we can talk to them, but we're talking to that unconditional love or the peace within which that unconditional love unfolded. That's where we talk to them. And the deeper we go in our own being, the more contact we have with the world that we call the world beyond physical existence.
Mm-hmm. Just that we are exposed to so much of we'll call it the conditioning. And that's what I wanted to say. But everybody has their own experience and their own conditioning. Regardless, I completely understand what you're saying. That core is always there. It's in every single one of us, regardless of what we're exposed to and what our experiences are and how much love we have as a child or don't have. Right?
Exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. No matter what the trauma is,
Yeah.
unconditional love is still the essence of your individual being. So how do you deal with trauma? Well, you may have to learn some things from whatever the situation was so it doesn't happen again, right? So that's like worldly learning. But ultimately, you want to find your way back to your own essence so you can live from life for life instead of living from a memory of trauma into dysfunction. Right?
I do believe everybody's capable of that. I really do.
100%. We're wired. We're wired. This is our wiring. This is our wiring. Every human being is like a little Christ child. Conception is immaculate. Birth is lowly. You know what? Lowly birth. St. Augustine, the church father, he said very elegantly, he said, we are all born between the urine and the excrements, right? Because the birth canal is between pee and poo. It's between pee and poo, right? So it doesn't matter who you are. You come in
That's right.
a lowly birth.
Being a human. Right.
Yeah, that's just the nature of it, right? And that's not something to judge and go about. It's just like that's just the fact.
Again,
but you come in,
right? We start judging everything and adding,
right? Right. When it is what it is, right? And then you have your years of learning, and then you make a contribution, right? And then eventually your body gets crucified by something. Either could be a bullet, or it could be old age, or it could be nutrient deficiencies, or it could be poison, or it could be a fall from a tree or off a cliff, or a snake bites you. So eventually the body gets crucified. And the last part of the Christ story, death is not the end, because the body was never life. When life and the body part company, the body is finished and gets recycled into air, water, and dust that it's made from. And life continues, because life is indestructible and never gets sick, never dies, right? But the separation is there. That separation is a given for physical, created, formed things. Anything that has form will lose its form eventually, right? But life has no form.
Or is it the unconditional love that never dies?
Unconditional love never dies, and peace never dies. And then the shine, when you're in touch with that while you're alive, when you feel love, you live in that light, you can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it, and you can taste it in the space your body occupies if you do a stillness practice. When you feel that, then that shines out of you, and I call that inspired purpose. Because when I feel loved, I don't want to hurt people. When I feel loved, it's like, oh, wow, I'm taken care of. I'm completely cared for. And if I don't feel cared for, I know what I need to do, bring my focus back to where that care is. Because it's always there. Every time I go there, it's there, right? Then it's like, okay, well, it's not about me anymore. Now what should I do with my life? Well, there's nothing left to do except to help. Help where you can, right? Do what needs to be done. Make the biggest splash for good you can in the time you have on this planet, right? There was a time when I didn't feel cared for, and I was always going around like anxiety. That would be my go-to, right? What can I do that'll get me taken care of? And I wouldn't do things that obviously needed to be done because I couldn't see how those particular things would take care of me. So I would chase something I thought would take care of me, and nothing ever did because I'm already cared for. I just have to focus on where I am cared for. I don't have to create that. And now I can say, okay, whatever needs to be done, let me go there. What most needs to be done has the biggest market. So even if you're talking about money, if you go to where's the biggest market, that's where the most money is. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to be doing it not because you need to extract something from it, but because it needs to be done. And somebody benefits from it being done, right?
How many years would you say it took you to get to this point?
I would say when I was 28 and I had that experience, that for me was the total reset. Whether you call that the second coming or you call it the second birth, people have names for stuff. And I don't know what they mean because nobody ever explains it to you. But I would say that was for me was the turning point. And since then, I have been on that track, learning, and I will be a work in progress until my body craps out. Right? It's not ever like, and I have never seen how deep it goes. I've gone pretty deep. I have never seen how deep it is. There's no bottom to the experience of peace and unconditional love. Mm-hmm. So that's always the go-to. That's always the first thing I do in the morning. I always do it before I do these shows. right?
Meditation or in what?
It's called self-knowledge. So what happened? So that's where it started. And then it became a memory. And then I said, man, I want to stay in that place all the time. I don't want to just have one shot at, I want to live in that. You know, in a way, it's an extension of the story, how he lived, right?
Right.
How did he live, right? Okay, so how do you do that? Well, that question took me to someone who showed me a practice. And it's always a stillness practice, where the point of the practice is you sit down, you shut out your external distractions as much as you can, and then you see if you can bring the focus into the middle of your head and see if you can see any light there. Or you're listening. Listen inside. See if there's anything to hear in your silence, to see in your darkness, to feel in your emptiness. Emptiness is another word for heartache. Restlessness, right? Longing, yearning, striving, right?
I feel like something's missing.
Yeah. I lost something. Yeah, what did I lose? I lost myself. I lost my connection to myself. So I lost myself, right? So that's always the point, and then you make that a discipline. I want to be fully present in all of my being as much as possible. And I literally, of course, we always go in and out because we're dealing with the world and we're dealing with ourselves as well. But the more you do that, when you start, it's hard. You just sit still. Oh, that's so boring. You know how much peace there is in the boredom? So fall in love with boredom because that's your path to peace. We're so addicted to doing. We're so addicted to doing, right?
It's even more challenging now with cell phones. And I don't mean just for kids. The addiction.
Okay, but it's not.
Right?
It's not.
I don't think so.
It's not. Let me tell you why.
Oh, good. Okay.
You only need one distraction to lose yourself.
That's true.
Now we have 1,000, but we only needed one anyway.
Right.
So you can be a monk sitting in a monastery, and a fluttering leaf outside your window can distract you, or a beautiful woman going by can distract you, right? Or whatever. So what's that?
I said, I don't know. I'm not a monk.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, if it's for the nuns, it's the other way around. So
right.
Yeah. So it needs to become a discipline. So if you commit to doing the practice, the more you practice, the better you get at it, and the deeper you go. And you can go infinitely deep. And so I've been doing that for over 50 years now.
50 years.
Over 50, yeah, 50. I started in 1972, so I'm 52 years into it, right? And why is that? But you know what? We're human beings, and we spend all our time doing. So we're actually living like human doings. And we don't give being the attention it ought to get. And if you think about it, is being or doing more important?
Being.
Why?
Well, back to what you're saying. That's when you come into yourself. That's when you know yourself. That's the place.
But it has to be more practical for people who don't think about it. You can be without doing, but you can't do without being. So being is your foundation, right? So being is your foundation that all you're doing is built on.
This is why you're the teacher and I'm listening.
Yeah. And so anyway, being is more important than doing, but we put doing first all the time.
In my life, I work with people who are just too busy doing all the time. And I come from a place where, I understand what you're saying. And even though I haven't been 50 years into the stillness practice, I completely get it. I do have that sense of knowing and understanding and try to convey that to my own clients or in the work that I do. And you should see how I know that you get it. But my heart goes out to people on a daily basis because they have so many barriers up. They tell themselves, they convince themselves it's a mindset. I can't do it. I can't be still. I can't stop. I can't stop.
They need teachers who say something different.
Right.
They've had teachers who told them that. A baby doesn't come out of the womb and saying,
I can't. Right.
I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I'm not loved.
It is still my least favorite phrase when I hear it, one of my kids say it, when they say, I can't.
Yeah.
Right. In that moment, it's like, God.
In German, they have a saying, I can't means I don't want to.
Genau.
Ich kann nicht heißt, ich will nicht.
Ich kann nicht. Yeah. Ich will nicht. Right.
Yeah. That's what they learned. It's like, we tell our kids until they're teenagers, oh, you can do anything you want. And then when they become teenagers and they start doing crazy things, they say, be realistic, get grounded, get realistic, get a job, be practical, right? So, so we talk them out of it too.
Conflicting, right.
Because they're doing experiments and we're afraid of the outcome of those experiments. But that's how they develop their own life. So it's almost we should be encouraging to do crazy things. Not really crazy things necessarily. No, let them come up with the crazy. Just support their willingness to try things out.
Growth and to not hold themselves back in fear. Fear is paralyzing, and I see that, in so many people. Obviously, as a mother, I battle that tendency as a parent to want to
keep them safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep them safe. Yeah. Here's the thing. There is no fear in unconditional love or in peace.
Correct.
Or in inspired purpose. Okay,
and I understand that very well. And I can just say to listeners, if people are still listening, how freeing that is.
Unbelievable.
Freeing. You're not trapped in any change or chains. I mean, expectations, fear. Yes.
And then you look at the world. A lot of people are bummed out and depressed and anxious about the world. It's changing too fast and it's not changing and they have no control over it.
Right. Or even their own lives.
But here's the thing. The light in you will always be lit. If you go there, you'll be lit up. And you maybe need to understand that life will always be completely amazing, magnificent, awesome. And a lot of times the world will suck really badly. So take your focus from your heart, not from reactions to all the craziness going on in the world. How important is that to have that as your anchor?
That's powerful.
To live in that light, right? And if you live in that light, you will change that world into one that is better to live in. But you have to do the homework. And that's the most important thing is the homework. And then as your sense of yourself changes, how you see the world changes and how you live into the world will change. You will be an influence in that direction, just like you're an influence in a bad direction when you're being stupid in your life and not doing your homework.
Yes. Everybody around us in our personal lives, people learn by example. People watch whether they're conscious of it or not. That's how children learn.
Yeah.
Right? And so
mirror neurons.
Yeah.
Right? Monkey see, monkey do.
Exactly. So I'm very inspired just listening. And some of it is such simple words, but I think the most important thing is do the work on a daily basis. It's the same with our diet. It's the same with exercise, all of these pillars of wellness that I talk about, Udo, and just to bring it back to that, they say this a lot, simple daily habits matter most.
But the reason why I chose to do this before we talk about fats next time, right, is because when I feel inspired and I feel good about being alive, I actually want to stick around. I want to be here as long as I can because it's so awesome to be alive, right?
And experience.
I'll do what I need to do to not get deficient or poisoned. I eat mostly raw, mostly plant-based. Okay. Mostly. I'm not a fanatic about diets, but mostly because it works best for me. And I wasn't always like that.
Right. You learned.
Age, right? But I'm paying attention to what my body tells me. But if I wasn't inspired, making a change, that's all too hard. It's too hard. Right?
You'd ignore it. You'd override.
And if I'm depressed enough, I will actually destroy my own body deliberately.
That's right.
Because I can't stand to be in it because I'm so not liking what it is. So be inspired. You can't be depressed and inspired at the same time.
No, I agree.
Be inspired and your life is built on peace, on love, and shines out of you as inspiration when you do your homework and you get to that place. It's like, wow. And then all of a sudden, I'm independent. I depend on what's within me. That's what independent is supposed to mean. And I'm not as dependent on everybody else seeing it my way or my buddies telling me that I should be doing this or should be doing that. I get to take my advice from life. And I get better advice from life than I get from my buddies.
Just have to be open to it and listen. Listen to life.
Yeah. And you can hear it, not in words necessarily, but in feelings. Right. And for that, you need to bring your focus home.
So I say that the goal of this podcast is to inspire and empower listeners, Udo, and you just nailed it with the inspiring.
Inspire, empower, educate, and entertain.
Yes, because we have to have fun along the way.
Yeah.
Love and have fun.
Yeah.
Banging my hand. Okay. So my son was calling on that note. Let me just send one text and say, if that's okay, because I'll jump back into the train of thought.
Yep.
So this is my daily life, still recording my podcast. A lot of interruptions, a lot of the life, it's life. It's hard to juggle a lot of things that we're dealt with. And like you said, it only takes one thing to distract us. And that's what I encounter. And so this is very real to me. I'm no different than anybody else I coach or work with and try to teach and educate. It's not easy. And this is a daily practice, carving out time to, find that stillness. I say, create your non-negotiables. I really like to find time for meditation and yoga. It doesn't happen every day. So how do you manage that? I guess you're at a different place in life right now, Udo, but help us all find.
Well, I would say this, that the heartache that I experienced and the solution that I found to my heartache has made it started as a discipline because I couldn't even sit still for 5 minutes when I started because I was so word and mind driven. So I started slow, 5, 10. The guy who taught me suggested an hour. I couldn't sit still that long. Give me a break.
That's unrealistic.
Then I put myself down for not doing an hour.
Sure, of course.
And then I realized, I should give myself credit for doing 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? So you start small. And because it answered my question, I had this question, how do I stay in it? I realized very quickly that this was a way to answer that question. In fact, I used to, when I began, my ex-wife and I used to argue every day, all day. She would be in the kitchen. She'd get up earlier than I did. I walk into the kitchen. I say one sentence. She would take the opposite view and we would get into this argument. And the argument would get really intense. I was pretty insecure, so I wanted her to agree with me. So that was me.
You recognize that now, but it's not.
I know it now. I didn't know it then, right?
Yeah.
And so it would get so intense that it was like I'd be to a point where I'm either going to hit her or I have to get out of the house. And so I would get out of the house. And we were living in Colorado at 9,100 feet elevation in little cabins in the woods. So I'd get out of the house, I'd sit on a log and do the practice for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And when I'd do the practice, I'd look, we argued about that? That's so trivial. They're just like those people that were arguing trivially when I was 6 in Germany, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so trivial. And then I realized if I did the practice before the argument, I wouldn't rise to the bait. So by the time I was 6 months into it, I had seen that this was making a difference. And I thought when I went into it, it was like, this is too simple. And this kid is just like, he's only 14, I'm 30. And what the hell is he going to teach me, a little kid? So it's just like, that's where I was. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Then I realized within 6 months, oh my God, this works. And so because it works, and I saw the results, and I was hungry for something that worked, that's what drives it. Mm-hmm. If your heart aches, that's a drive.
Right.
Be present to that drive, but recognize that the source of the drive is your disconnection from yourself. And then if you find your way back, anything that helps you get back to yourself will feel better than the heartache, right? Mm-hmm. And then the deeper you go, the better it feels. And now it's not a discipline anymore. Now it's just what I do. I don't even want to walk out my door without carrying that with me. Because the one thing was, at one point I was doing the practice and I feel really good. And I get out, and as soon as I got up, I would leave the experience, and my focus would go out there. So now I'm not feeling it anymore. And I got to a point where I said, damn it, there must be a way that I can drag this feeling into the world with me. Had never occurred to me. And the moment that occurred to me that might be possible, it became possible. Not immediately, right? But it became easier. But I had even... the fact that I had never said that to myself was a block to doing it. So I was going in and losing it, going in and losing it, going in and losing it. And now it's like, go in, take it with you. Go in, take it with you. Take it in, take it with you. And now I'm pretty good. I have a lot of fun with strangers. We have fun all the time. We're laughing all the time. And I just talk to people on the street. And
the world needs more of that.
Yeah. So
my kids judge me when I do that. They get all...
What?
When I talk to strangers. When I have just a pleasant conversation, they say, oh, don't do that, Mom. You're weird. That's cringe. And that's a shame. And
How old are your kids?
Oh, they're from 12. So, of course, that's the preteen age that loves to judge. Then 16, 19, and 21.
So at 21, you have to give that up.
Yeah, he doesn't do that anymore. It's the young.
Okay, that's good. So, and anyway, when they judge, just remember, they're not here to judge, but to love too.
Right.
So that means if you're judging me, you're not doing your homework, right?
Right.
Not that you've taught them or encouraged them to do the homework. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. I don't know, right? But when somebody judges, they're not doing the homework because they don't feel loved in that moment, right? And then they think them feeling loved requires you to shut up and not be crazy, whatever they say to that, right? But it's your life. It's your expression. It's none of their business, really. They're a little young to know that, but it's never too early.
Too young to start. I agree.
To make the point, right? And then you can't make them do their homework. They have to feel the heartache. I probably would have conversations about heartache with them because guaranteed they've had heartache.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
And where the heartache comes from our disconnection from ourselves when we went out into the world. They've already come out into the world, right? And nothing in their education has told them that they need to spend an hour every morning to get to home base, right? And then live their life from home base and take the base with them and always live from that base. And I don't do it all the time either, but I'm clear about the track.
Mm-hmm. Right. That was very clear.
Yeah. And that you said the youngest is 12. At 12, she's already out there, pretty much, right?
Yeah. I'm a mom to boys only.
Oh,
no
so
girls among them, right?
Okay. Yeah. Well, if it was a girl, it would still be the same,
I know.
Yeah. So, and then the fact that you do some practice, that's modeling for them. Because if you didn't do any practice, you would sort of shut a door for them of possibility that they would monkey do, monkey see. Or monkey see, monkey do, right? You would make it harder for them because it was not normal in their childhood.
So I see that it's interesting that I recognize that with other behaviors and habits, and I teach people, bring it back to nutrition, which is what I've done for so long, telling other parents, do make like your plate is building their idea of what constitutes a healthy plate. So be sure that your plate is healthy, whether your kids eat it or not. My kids don't eat their vegetable and salad every night, but they see what I do. I agree with you. They used to see that I meditate every day and yoga, and they still do. But not as much. I think I tend to do it in private. So why should you hide? In other words, don't hide those practices. Share that and exemplify it.
Yeah. And especially if you're doing a practice, when you come out, you're better than when you went in.
I'm always better after. Trust me.
They'll notice that. You don't have to say anything. They will notice that.
Let mom go do her yoga, please.
And if they ask, because I'm sure they'll ask once in a while, say, I always feel better when I do it. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
It's not complicated, right?
It's not.
And the more I'm present in my space, the better I feel. Why? Because life feels unbelievably beautiful when you actually crawl inside and go there and notice.
I know what you're talking about because I have been there, and you're inspiring me to get there. I hope daily. Yeah. And share that with others. This is beyond inspiring. This is a really beautiful conversation. I am so grateful to have it. I do have a question. I love just listening to you and learning. I ask all of my guests, what is one thing or what is something you're grateful for today? Could be at this moment.
Got 24 hours?
Sure.
What is there to not be grateful for? Think about it. Because if it's true that I'm filled with unconditional love, and that unconditional love fills every creature on this planet, I'm literally living in love, surrounded by love. Now, the issue is
that you've made me cry 3 times so far.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. Well, dirty water has to come out. Yeah. So literally, if you're filled with it, or you're filled with the divine and you're surrounded by the divine, there's no place where you can go. Peace is the divine, by the way. There's nowhere you can go where you're not filled and surrounded by that. If you look at it that way, there isn't anything to be not grateful for. This is like, oh my God, what a feast. What a movable feast. Oh my God. I get to have a human experience. Dust, water, and air. a little fraction of solar energy gets to have the human experience. Well, I maybe get 100 years, right? Yeah. And then after that, billions of years I won't exist. And before that, billions of years I didn't exist. This is the party. This is the holiday. Make the most of it. Be present in it, right? That's always what it comes down to. When you become fully present in your nature, the gratitude you feel for everything is endless, right? Because it's like, yeah, okay, even my war was a gift.
It is a gift.
My poisoning pesticide that got me into physical health, that was a gift. Didn't feel like one at the time, but it was a self-made lesson.
Yeah. Yes.
Apparently, it was useful for me to learn that. Right. So I got poisoned by pesticides that I sprayed.
And then look what you did from that point on. And so that's in the continuation. We will talk a lot.
Yeah. The worst situations in my life have turned into the greatest gifts, really. So sun is shining. I'm having this conversation. Talk about gratitude, right?
Yeah.
I'm alive. I'm breathing. It feels good to be alive.
I'm smiling.
The chair feels good under my bum. I'm not sitting in a mud puddle. Right? And the sun is shining outside and the leaves are out and everything's sparkling. Yesterday it rained. I mean, look at it around. It's like I have a red lamp that I use sometimes and I have gadgets and I can get connected to you and a whole bunch of people that I don't know just because of a technology that got built.
Yes.
So I can be very grateful for that.
It's enabled us to be connected. So great technology and for being here with you today.
And if we could get 8 billion people to see their life that way, this would be a completely different planet.
See, we have our work cut out for us, Udo.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not stopping until they all have.
That's what I mean. We have to continue not just this conversation, but everything we do so that we have many more years on this planet to have fun.
To have fun and
in this party, right? And bring more people to the party.
And be blissed out. Yeah. Sing and dance with joy.
We didn't even talk about dancing yet. I just think out of all the things, that you can do on a daily basis to like bring you joy, for me, it's just dancing around my kitchen.
Oh, yeah. I do that all the time. Delicious. I dance in the living room and I do it backwards because apparently when you get old, you lose your balance. So, but if you walk backwards, see, that's good for balance. Cool. But I do all kinds of other things. I have no balance problem. Good. But I love dancing. I love movement.
Movement's extremely important.
And I don't need music for it.
Okay. I don't either. We don't. I will tell listeners, though, we started this podcast with the most beautiful music from you whistling.
Yeah.
And I won't ever forget.
Like an Angel Passing Through My Room, sung by Sissel and written by ABBA.
We had to share that. On that note, Udo, this has been such a gift to me and I can't thank you enough. So we are going to schedule our follow-up and talk so much about fats that people are very confused by and not wait for that.
Yep, that's the most neglected and confusing area in nutrition.
100%.
Yep. And we'll
cornerstone of our health.
We will straighten it out.
Yes, I can't.
All right.
Okay, thank you for being here. Thank you from my heart to yours. Namaste, and I will talk to you very soon.
Yeah, thank you, Susan.
Thank you for taking time to join me and listen to this episode. You can find more information and subscribe to the Sense of Wellness podcast on our website at ccphp.net/sens. This show is brought to you by Castle Connolly Private Health Partners, a concierge medicine organization that partners with and supports exceptional physicians to deliver an unrivaled experience of comprehensive, collaborative, and attentive care for a preventative approach on health and optimal well-being for members. Be sure to listen in next time to the Sense of Wellness podcast, and remember, simple daily habits matter most.